to do with the violence and anti-Semitism that the Jews suffered. So there's a long history, and I will just mention it in a sentence or two, that the Jews of the Europe were persecuted, not because of any other thing, but because they were Jews. They were discriminated against, and you all might have gone through this episode of Hitler and him killing more than 6 lakh Jews in the gas chambers in the period of the Second World War. We all know this event as Holocaust. So when the Second World War happened, the Jews were killed in any possible number that the Nazi Party and the European societies could kill. So a great number of Jews left Europe and came back to their ancestral land once the Jews lived there. So they came back to this part of the land, but they were all European, white-looking non-Asian people. So the image of Israel was Western and European. Israel was also found aggressive for the Asians and the Africans, aggressive for the Palestinian people. In 1948, Israel and the Jewish people who came from the Europe fought a war with the Palestinian people. Palestinians and the other Arab states lost the war, and Israel, with the help of the great powers like France and England and later America, built itself very strongly in the Middle East. So, from Indian point of view, Israel was an aggressive state, and it could become aggressive with the help of the imperial powers of United Kingdom and others. So you can see how Israel, rather than standing with the other Asian and African states against anti-imperialism, it actually took the help of the imperial powers to defend itself in the Middle East. Or this is how it could only defend itself. And Ben Gurion said it once very famously when India refused to have any friendship and India used to criticize Israel again. Ben Gurion said, well, the West and the European powers are far more important for the state of Israel than the public opinion of whole of Asia. So in a way, for its own national security and survival, it chose a greater relationship with the European and the Western imperial powers. So that in a way created quite a big gap between Israel and a country like India. What happened after? Now, these are the two images that you see. In the 80s, the first picture that you see on your left is Indira Gandhi and Narasimha Rao standing with a very, very famous Palestinian leader called Yasser Arafat. This is a picture taken at the airport in 1980 in Delhi when Arafat visited India. The another image that you see is Rajiv Gandhi standing with Yasser Arafat in 1987. So Arafat in the 80s was a very frequent visitor to India because India extended its full support to the Palestinian people and for their national rights than having any friendship with the state of Israel. A small story here that Indira Gandhi, who usually did not follow much Nehruvian political philosophy, this is the only example of her being very true to Nehru's diplomacy, where she followed Nehru's solidarity for the Palestinian people. Otherwise, in all her domestic politics, she did exactly opposite of what Nehru could believe she should do in India. Here comes the year 1992. So largely from 1948 onwards, throughout the 70s and 80s and 90s, you can see that the world was going through an ideological war called Cold War. So there was a very clear division between the countries that belonged to communist, Marxist, Soviet Union ideology, and the countries that were, with the American neoliberal capitalist market economy. India, in that ideological war, took a position against any of the two. So India chose not to join any of the two blocs, and India largely remained independent. Some people do assume, and some people do tell that India was actually very Soviet, tilted nation, that it had deep influences of communism and Marxism. But I must insist, and that's my personal view, that these were not actually political influences. The fact that India and the initial leadership of India, like Nehru and others, they were socialist with their own different versions. They never believed in the Marxist, Leninist revolution. Nehru was completely against power and uh, aggression, and Nehru was certainly against Stalin and Lenin, who were dictators rather than democratic leaders. So Nehru and others who were instrumental in shaping India's initial policy, or Indira Gandhi, they were socialist to a certain extent, but not Leninist or Marxist, certainly. Anyway, when you look at Israel, uh, so during the Cold War, nothing much happens with Israel. India doesn't have any opening or any kind of a conversation with the state of Israel formally. As you could see in the pictures of Yasser Arafat and Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, India was in close relationship with the Palestinian people and the Palestinian leadership and the larger Arab world. But in 1992, when the Cold War ended, it created a new reality for Indian foreign policy to engage. It created actually a new reality for every nation state. Cold War suddenly came to an end, and America became the single, power to dominate the world. But more importantly, for a small state or for an insignificant power like India, it was a time to revisit some of its old foreign policy principles. That now the colonialism is old enough to leave behind. Now the third world solidarity will have to be redefined because the world is completely a different world. So in that redoing of the Indian foreign policy in 1992, Narasimha Rao, who was the Congress Prime Minister, uh, became little warm towards Israel, meaning he was open to the idea of having a full diplomatic relationship with the state of Israel. And another push that happened in the year 1992 or the years before it was the fact that Rajiv Gandhi, as a prime minister, was very keen to open India to America for modernization, for making India a developed, a modern state. And one of the important things that was needed for India's opening to America was this friendship with Israel. So in a way, it became a sub-chapter of India's opening to America, that if India opens to America, then India shall also open to the state of Israel. Rajiv Gandhi dies, a sad and a sudden death. So he doesn't actually remain to do any of those things. But Narasimha Rao, who comes after him, was part of this change in Indian political thinking because of his close working with Rajiv Gandhi. And Narasimha Rao took the opportunity to not only redo India's foreign policy with the rest of the world, but having a full diplomatic relations with the state of Israel in 1992. So the formal diplomatic, when I say formal diplomatic, meaning when the states exchange ambassadors, when the states formally start doing businesses, when states formally start opening their borders for the tourists from each other's, when a state starts doing collaborations from defense to agriculture to any of the common interests that they have, or the benefits that they can get to each other. That beginning happens between India and Israel in 1992. So if you look at it from 1992, it's more or less 28 years of relationship formally. There is no relationship between India and Israel from 1948 till 1992. So what we are now going to look at in the following pages is the amount of collaborations and the amount of exchanges between the two from 1992 to, let's say, March 2020. Just last month, something very interesting happened between the two countries. So let's get to look at what happened after 1992. Uh, so, as I said before, these are 3 points to revisit. I just want you to look at these 3 points carefully. What triggers India's change of policy towards Israel in 1992? A, end of the Cold War. B, Israel also became source of the critical armaments and defense deals in the period from 1948 to 1992, when India did not have any diplomatic relations from 1948 onwards. Israel developed itself in a very particular way. Now, Israel is a country which has no natural resources. It doesn't have oil, it doesn't have gas. As I said, it's a very small place. A population of 9 million today. 9 million is like what, 90 lakh people. It's like 1/3 of Delhi or 1/4 of Delhi's population. So Israel developed itself in a very niche areas of technology and innovation and agriculture and defense. So one of the first things that they developed was in the field of the defense and warfare, fighting wars. Well, this was self-explained because Israel was fighting wars with the Arab states from 1948 onwards. So it was something that was existentially needed. But while Israel prepared itself to defend itself, it also prepared itself in many of the advanced technologies of the modern wars, developing missiles, developing small parts. It doesn't make big helicopters or tanks. Israelis make some very little parts that become very important in most of the big weaponaries. So they developed themselves very technically, and they were quite helpful when India wanted them to help. So there were 2 times when India actually asked, without having any relationship, for a help. So first was Nehru. In 1962, when Nehru faced China's attack, he needed to prepare India's defense abilities, and he needed immediate help. He knew that he refused to have friendship with Israel, but he knew that Israel is still very keen to help India. So he sought help from Ben Gurion, and Ben Gurion was very happy to help Nehru. He sent arms and equipment, whatever Nehru requested. When Indira Gandhi fought the 1971 war in Bangladesh, she again asked Israel to help India, and Israel was willing to help even then. So you can also understand how much Israel was keen that even being rejected by India diplomatically, it was never fussy about helping India whenever Indian political class sought the help. So in the 90s, India realized that maybe it's a good time to strategically build a defense relationship with the state of Israel. The third thing that happened in the 90s was that Israel was talking to the Palestinian leaders for resolving their conflict. Now, this is also a very unique situation because Israel, from 1948, did not talk to the Palestinians till 1992, 1993. And when the Israelis started talking, India said, well, if the 2 parties are now willing and talking and they are sitting on a table, there's no reason to boycott Israel. There is every good reason to have a full diplomatic relationship with the state of Israel. So with these 3 things, end of the Cold War, India's developing need for the defense, and the fact that Israel was trying to resolve its conflict with the Palestinians, created a ground for a full diplomatic opening in the 1992. What happened after it? You will see a funny cartoon. Now, this is a cartoon that came almost in 2017. Uh, you will identify two people here: Manmohan Singh, India's ex-prime minister, and Narendra Modi, India's current prime minister. So India Israel. This is one of the cartoons when in 2017 Modi visited Israel. Uh, there was a lot of discussion in Indian television and news analysis, and one of the ways a lot of policy thinkers put this change was that India came out of the closet with Israel. That Manmohan Singh or many of the Congress prime ministers who had sought help with the, from Israel, never acknowledged Israel. So it's true. Indira Gandhi, Nehru, Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh, they could all take help from Israel, but they never publicly acknowledged. So on your left, you see uh, uh, a burqa, a covered figure. That figure is Israel. And now is Modi. And you see that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's the current Prime Minister of Israel and who considers Modi as his best friend, is throwing away the burqa. So this is a very, visually uh, appealing depiction of what happened, how the Enigma, the controversial Israel, was dealt previously, and how the now overconfident India's Prime Minister is making no qualms about his close relationship with the Israeli Prime Minister or the State of Israel. So this is coming. This is called closing. Coming out of the closet, in even in the diplomatic language. Have here now. This is a picture of the coronavirus time. I'm sure you are all very familiar with the mask and the whole idea of it. While I was reading update about this talk, I browsed through what's happening between India and Israel in the month of March, and I said, well, I don't think there would be a defense deal because of the coronavirus. Israel is also in a very serious crisis with the coronavirus. But no, they actually were talking about the arms and guns. So on 24th of March, India procured automatic machine guns from Israel. And these are like 16,000 machine guns that India procured by paying around 116 million. It's like 100 crore Indian rupees. And there was news about it in the international media because they wrote, well, India shouldn't be spending 100 crore in buying guns. Right now, it should buy masks. That depends on somebody's perspective. What is important? Masks is important, and guns are important, as it looks like for Narendra Modi. So, what does it tell you? It tells you that the strategic partnership between India and Israel, as one can, read about, or one can uh, details, the number of things that they're both exchanging, is all in the field of defense, missiles and guns. After defense, there's a new area of development between the two, which is strategic and coming up. That's agriculture. It's also coming up in a very big way. So this is in short. You should really forgive me if I skipped certain parts and dropped names without explaining much of their references. But this is 25-30 minutes of an overview of India's approach to the State of Israel. And I did want to start from 1948 because it tells you very importantly a couple of things. A, that foreign policy in a particular time, whether now or whether in 1948, is always about the ideas of the time. So the ideas in the 1948 and 1950 were the ideas that were important for the political leaders at that time. So anti-colonialism, imperialism, non-alignment, third world, these are some of the very important things that the world cared at that time. And then the world moved, the world changed. The new political actors that have come up from 1992 onwards or now in Indian politics, uh, they think of the world very differently than their, political ancestors. So for Narendra Modi or for India's foreign policy for last 6-8 years is not about any kind of solidarity or political slogans. It's more about uh, procuring hard material benefits. So in a way, it is an instrumental foreign policy. It's instrumental because it seeks to go wherever it can reap benefits from. So India's foreign policy towards Israel today is instrumentalist. However, there is also an ideological dimension to it. So if you will read, let's say, many of the think tanks, many of the news reports on India Israel, a lot of people say that, hey, Nehru wasted too much of time. India should have had friendship with Israel long time back. India should do this. India should have an Israeli model. Recently, one of the very responsible Indian diplomat in New York said, well, there's an Israeli model to solve the problem of Kashmir. Uh, there are a lot of Hindu organizations that think that, India should learn things from Israel and fix the problem of terrorism and Islam or Muslims. Now, these are very, very problematic ideas, and I just want you to be aware of them. That they mean a very particular kind of a political, ideological alignment. It's an alignment that believes that a state shall be strong in whatever best possible manner they can, and they should just join hands with whatever tactical relationship that they can develop. So, to a certain extent, the time that we live in, the time that, let's say, after the end of the Cold War, the world politics is going through, is a time of capitalism. It's a time of market. It's a time of being practical. It's a time of being pragmatic, and not being too much ideological and ideological in the old sense. To me personally, this in itself is an ideology. To be practical, to be pragmatic, to look out for benefits, to look out for a win-win situation is also an idea. It's as ideological as Nehru was in his own way or for his own set of ideas. So I hope with the help of this brief overview, you will take more interest in this subject. And the purpose of this talk is to certainly let you know what the Jindal School of International Affairs does in its different degree programs and how it develops a very practical policy-oriented analysis for a student to understand India's foreign policy. So Israel is a case study for you, by the way. I mean, if you're interested in India's foreign policy, then Israel is just a case study. And I want you to think of it as a case study to understand what changed in India's foreign policy from the 1950s until 2020. So I think this is my time up. I am going to now listen to your questions or comments, and I'm going back to Ridhiman, who I can't see,
Thank you so
to
much,
take
sir.
this conversation further. Thank you, Ridhiman, and thank you everybody who took time to sit through this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the informative session that we had today. I think it gives us a lot of information about the historic bit of India and Israel relationship, and it gives us a lot of other content to read more about the relationship. Uh, I now request all the participants to come up with their questions related to the subject. And I have few questions out here, so I will start with the questions right away. We can take around 15 minutes we have for taking questions from you. So please send us your questions. I would read it out to the professor who could answer to your questions. First question is there are a lot of critics who talks about Israel and Indian relationship, and we would want to understand from you, sir, is you know the in your opinion, India Israel Palestinian conflict that we have, is there a is there a particular way or a strategy to get it resolved, either by a single or a two-state solution?
Uh, okay, it's like solving India-Pakistan problem. I don't think we have an idea here. My best understanding, my own view, is this: that two parties, like two individuals, have to realize the futility of fighting. Until and unless they realize that fighting is a mutually devastating act, they won't solve the conflict. So, any amount of mediation by India, any amount of, thankfully, India doesn't offer to mediate. But let's say America has been doing quite a lot. Trump recently came with a Trump peace plan. Will it work? Certainly not. It won't work because Palestinians are not party to it. Uh, so I would say it is up to the two parties to realize how futile it is to waste human life, to inflict so much violence upon each other, and continue with the conflict. It's a choice that they keep making, by the way. I don't think it's an inevitable situation. Nation states, societies, and individuals make choices, and this is their choice to keep the status quo and wait for a better time. Israel seems to be winning this status quo for a long time, and Palestinians don't seem to have any effective opposition or a fight against the state of Israel. Israel is simply too much capable. But Israel is also paying a heavy price for continuing its own life with the conflict. So yeah, I think as human beings, we tend to think how best it can be resolved. But any number of ideas from outside, from third parties, won't work. It's the same India-Pakistan story. We just need to realize, sometimes human beings just need to realize collectively to make better choices. So let's hope for a better time.
Just to add on to this question, in India we have Muslims quite a number, and you know the relationship between Israel and Palestine. Why, what is the reason why do you think that India has not criticized or given an opinion onto this subject?
Well, okay, a lot of people think that Indian Muslims had something to do with Israel because so many Muslims, it took the position in favor of the Palestinians. Arab people and societies who are close to the society and Indian state. So influence in the past is not India's fault. Something they do it towards. I'll give you an example. Indian Muslims the one and identity.
Work. So please bear with us. We will be there in a few minutes. Just wait for 5-10 minutes. Just wait for 5-10 minutes. Professor, are you there?
It's actually quite fine.
Okay. Now, so there's another question. Has India
Madhushri.
completely, yeah.
Yeah, I think I lost Ridhiman, or I don't know how much I missed.
Now, I just repeat the question now. Has India completely dehypated Israel Palestine, particularly after the certainly PM visited Israel through Jordan? Can we term India Israel as a neutral alliance?
Yeah, this is a very common phrase, and I'm very happy somebody used it to ask a question here. So, dehyphenation seems to be the Indian policy here. That India said, well, we will have our solidarity with the state of, with the people of Palestine, but we are not going to look at Israel through the Palestinian issue anymore. So yes, there is a certain amount of separation between the two. India still expresses its full solidarity for the Palestinian people. India doesn't support all the time Israeli state when it comes to certain questions in the United Nations. So India is trying to balance the act here. Okay, a lot of people claim that India has abandoned the Palestinian cause. I don't think so, because uh, when India did not have any diplomatic relations with the state of Israel, it didn't help the Palestinian question either. So, not having any relationship with Israel doesn't serve any constructive purpose. However, on occupation, on the two-state solution, on the military rule of the Israeli state, upon the Palestinian people, these are critical questions, and I assume India will keep taking the position of critical friend. This is what India is trying to be for Israel, a friend who can be critical when it comes to the Israeli conduct vis-a-vis the Palestinian people.
Thank you so much, Professor. I was disconnected because of the internet connectivity, and I could
I see.
join back now. So I would want to ask the next question put up one of the participants here uh, regarding the Indian policy. Do you think if there is a non-BJP government in the center, do you think there would be a different policy with Israel in terms of foreign policy?
Not really. So I want everybody to look at the screen. If if there is a non-BJP government in Delhi, it would look like Manmohan Singh and the cover. We should know this, that from 2004, when the UPA was in power, till 2013, in those 9-10 years, India extended its very strong defense collaborations with the state of Israel. India did. The only difference that the Modi and the BJP has brought is that they have made it much more public. BJP does bring another change to this approach to Israel. There are a lot many people in BJP, like uh, Subramanian Swamy, who's an MP, who say that Hindutva and Zionism, the Jewish nationalism, should join hands. So there are, these radical right-wing conservative on both sides who think that, oh, Israel is a role model to follow. So there is this school within the BJP, but it's not the BJP all. But there are parts of BJP who also want to make too much out of Israel in Indian politics, which doesn't really serve any purpose, because they don't even actually know the complexity of Israel and its conflict in the Middle East. They simplify it as a fight against Muslims. It's not that.
All right, sir. Thank you. Uh, is there a possibility that India can possibly, play a hand in solving the Israel-Palestine conflict?
Well, if somebody can help India Pakistan solving their problem, I don't think so. See, as I said before, India does have a very good position. Uh, India is trusted by Israel, and India is deeply trusted by the Palestinians. So, yes, in any conflict, if there is a third party that can be trusted by both, it's an advantage. So, Trump is not trusted by the Palestinians. So, Trump is no advantage when it comes to solving any problem. I mean, he's actually a problem. Uh, so India does have that advantage, but India knows it very well. India doesn't offer itself to mediate, and it's wise, I think, not to mediate, because the conflict is too messy. It's too complicated for a third party to initiate any kind of a change. It's unfortunate, very unfortunate, but yes, it is left to the both the fighting parties to solve it. And when they are ready, and usually they get ready by getting tired of it, then they come to some kind of a change. So we need to wait for that.
All right, so this question has like two parts in it. One is, how do you see India-Israel relationship post the current leadership, which is Netanyahu and Modi? And the second part would be, what is the purpose of JP Narayan's visit to Israel?
Oh wow, somebody knows about that. I'm so happy. I wanted to use that. Jayaprakash Narayan, I don't know how, I mean, okay, Jayaprakash Narayan was a great socialist. And, uh, and JP was very fond of Israeli model. So Israel started with these European Jews who came from Europe, and they were all socialist. And the Israeli state was built through this, social innovation called kibbutz. Kibbutz in Hebrew means a community life. Uh, so, so even before 1948, Jews started coming to, Palestine, Israel, long time back. And when they came and lived in a very collective life, meaning they had collective ownership of the land, they had collective ownership of the animals, they used to work together, and they used to take the benefits of together. So they were against private property. They were against the class division. And Israel was very unique in the 20s. I mean, Jews were very unique in the 1920s and 30s and 40s. And after 1948, Israeli state became the role model for socialism. As I said, Nehru and Ben Gurion were deeply socialist leaders. So JP visited Israel in 1958, I suppose. There is a very famous picture of him sitting with Ben Gurion. He visits Israel, he comes back, and he criticizes Nehru. He says why Nehru is not opening the relationship with the Israeli state. We can learn so many things. They are doing so many unique experiments with socialism. We can build so many things around them. Keep in mind that India in the 50s and 60s was going through this massive program called land reforms. Feudalism was our way of life, and now the land was to be given to the landless laborers and farmers. And Israel was a model for it. So yes, JP fell in love with Ben Gurion and political leaders of Israel because of their innovation of socialism and practicing it in a very, very everyday life. Second, you don't only have Ben Gurion, not only have JP, even Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, uh, in the 20s and 30s wrote how Jews should come to India and teach how to make kibbutz, how to make these commune in India. And Tagore was very famous in Israel in the 1930s and 40s. There is actually a street named after Tagore. Tagore never visited Israel. Uh, there's a street in Tel Aviv named after Tagore. Tagore was a very famous, favorite poet of many in Israel. So these were people who were intellectually of the same breed. That was the binding, that was the common ground. So these were the things that were important in the times. What can happen to this relationship after Modi and this Netanyahu phase? Well, it will naturally grow to more things. Unfortunately, it will grow into only defense, meaning more weapons, guns, and uh, fighting wars. Aggression is something that India is getting, into, and Israel is known to be an aggressive state. So, to me, it's a poor learning from Israel because Israel is unique for so many other things, but India is only learning how to fight from Israelis. Then, let's say, how to make a startup nation, how to do agriculture, how to make kibbutz. So, yes, uh, there is a joke. So India, I showed the picture, right? That when the image of Israel in India is about Mossad, guns, army, and tanks. The image in Israel of India is nirvana, meditation, yoga, shanti. People, young Israelis come to Dharamshala, Manali, Pushkar. They come to Paharganj in Delhi, and they think India is a destination of this peace and trance and some kind of a spiritual new world. So it's very interesting, right, that how each one is falling in love with the other for a one particular thing. So India is falling in love for the Israeli state for guns and Mossad, but Israelis are falling in love for something else. So we need to see who takes what. But yes, in short, the relationship is naturally uh, going to grow and grow a lot in the defense area.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think it's a very interesting thought, and I completely agree with that. Uh, now, I move on to the next question, and due to time constraint, this would be the last question for today's session. And but we have received a lot of questions, and I would want to answer and get back to them with the answers. So I would probably email them or reach out to them over phone, and just get back to them with the answers. Now I take the last question for today's session, wherein in situation like today, wherein we are struggling with COVID-19, uh, we are still inking and deal with Israel in terms of arms deal, wherein we are the entire economy, not just India, the global economy is struggling. So, any thoughts on this, sir, from your side?
See, it's a sad reality that this is how things are going to be for some time now. That yes, there is an immediate fear of life and fear of life for so many millions of people in Israel and India. But states, the nation states still think more about their national security. So, to be fair, they will keep talking about wars and weapons and ammunition even when the society is upside down. See, it's the way we all are built in. Okay, international politics is built by the nation states, and nation states do not think much beyond their territorial, sovereign, national security, what they call national interest. So yes, India and Israel, who knows, they'll be making another deal very soon. But yeah, they're going to do the same job. They will do the national security while people are going to, and they are helping people as well, to be fair. But yeah, this is a sad part of the life that nation states invest a lot of money still in their national security, whereas this could just go well for human security at the moment. It's a choice that our leaders are making. Okay, I would let everybody know this, that these are not inevitable developments. That please understand these are very, very important choices that our leaders make, and to make different choices, we need to choose different leaders or better leaders.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for the informative presentation today. And we have another session with you tomorrow as well. And
Yeah,
I would
thank
request
you.
all the participants to, come back tomorrow for a very different topic. We would be talking about exploring oneself through political leadership. So that's another very interesting topic that we have to discuss tomorrow. So I would like to thank Dr. Kinraj, all our participants, my colleagues for attending today's webinar, and we hope to see you tomorrow once again. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Ridiman, and thank you. I really appreciate all of your time for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.